Shalom and welcome to Looking Up. This week we read Torah portion Korach. In this Torah portion, we read about a rebellion against Moses led by his cousin Korach. When there are two Jews, there are at least three opinions, we say. We love to argue. Is it good or bad? Well, it depends on what kind of arguments we have and how we do it. There is a well-known quote from Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, which is the fundamental work on Jewish ethics, philosophy, and wisdom. And it says, any dispute that is for the sake of heaven will ultimately endure. That is not for the sake of heaven will not ultimately endure. What is a dispute that is for the sake of heaven? This is a dispute between Hillel and Shammai. And not for the sake of heaven, the dispute of Korach and his congregation. So what was the dispute between Hillel and Shammai? There were two groups of Jewish thought during the Talmudic period. One was called the House of Shammai, the other was called the House of Hillel. And frequently they had disagreements, they argued. But their sole motivation was to search for the truth, to understand God's will as described by the Torah. They didn't argue just for the sake of argument or to humiliate the other side and gain some confidence. They were respectful of each other and they felt like they were one team searching for the truth. What was the dispute of Korach and his congregation? Well, it was quite different. Who was Korach? Korach was the first cousin of Moses and Aaron, and he was a very rich man. In fact, when the Jewish people were in Egypt, Korach was the treasurer to Pharaoh. And when the Jewish people were leaving Egypt, Korach put all of his gold and silver in a countless number of chests, and he locked those chests. And he had so many keys that 300 mules were needed just to carry those keys. And Korach had a high position. He was the leader of the choir of Levites who sang in the temple, in the holy tent. But Korach was not satisfied with his position. He wanted more. He wanted more honor. So he became jealous of Moses. He became jealous of Aaron, the high priest, of Aaron's sons, the priests. And Korach was a very good speaker. So he found followers. He found 250 men who became his supporters. They made fun of Moses. They were saying bad things about Moses. Korach claimed that Moses appointed his closest relatives, his closest family members to the highest positions. What was Moses' response? Moses was a very humble man. In fact, Moses was the humblest man who ever lived. He didn't exercise his powers. He didn't summon Korach and his followers by force. Instead, he went to their gathering and he listened. He listened patiently to their disrespectful arguments, to their accusations, and then he spoke to them in a calm tone, using very gentle words. He tried to explain them that they were not right, and he tried to convince them to change their ways, but they didn't listen. And their rebellion against Moses turned into rebellion against the Torah and God. Finally, the earth opened its mouth and swallowed Korach and his followers and all their possessions. The quote from Pirkei Avot that I mentioned earlier says, what is a dispute that is not for the sake of heaven? The dispute of Korach and his congregation. The quote doesn't say the dispute of Korach and Moses. It says the dispute of Korach and his congregation. Moses isn't even in the picture. It was Korach who failed to settle disagreements within his own camp. Definitely, his dispute was not for the sake of finding the truth. When there are two Jews, there are at least three opinions. We do have disagreements and people do need to argue sometimes. But we should only do it for the sake of finding the truth and not to humiliate the other side and gain self-confidence. And when we have to argue, we should do it in a very polite, respectful, and peaceful way. Shabbat Shalom. Just a friendly reminder that this video should always be watched on Friday before Shabbat starts, so we don't spoil the peacefulness of Shabbat by using our electronic devices. Shabbat Shalom.